I was called to preach to Nineveh, and I ran. But why? Everyone thinks I was scared or stubborn, but the truth is far stranger. Do you want to know why I fled from God himself? I ran from God, not because I didn't believe, but because I feared what obedience would demand of me. I thought I could hide, sail far away, escape the call. But the sea, the storm, they reminded me, there is no hiding from him. I am Jonah, and this is my story.
Welcome to Testament Unspoken, where we bring biblical stories to life through the eyes of those who lived them. Each episode offers a raw, first-person perspective on some of the most powerful figures in Scripture, told with emotion, honesty, and depth. Please subscribe for more stories like this. Okay, let's dive into Prophet Jonah's perspective.
Hi, my name is Jonah. I ran from God, not because I didn't believe, but because I feared what obedience would demand of me. I feared the people I would have to confront, the words I would have to speak, the weight of carrying his message into the heart of a city drowning in sin. I thought I could hide. I thought I could sail far away, beyond sight, beyond reach, beyond the voice that called me. I boarded a ship, thinking that distance could erase the command, that waves could swallow my guilt, that the horizon could shield me from his presence. But the sea, the storm, they reminded me that his eyes are everywhere, that no current can carry you beyond his knowledge, that no wind can silence his call. The ship rocked as if the heavens themselves were angry with my defiance. Lightning cut across the sky like a reminder of his power. Rain lashed my face, and in the roar of the storm, I heard the truth I could not escape. There is no hiding from him. Not in the depths of the ocean, not in the farthest port, not in the silence of my fear. He finds us, he pursues us, and even when we run, even when we falter, he waits for us to turn, to obey, to surrender. Jonah 1:3. I was called to speak God's truth to Nineveh, a city of sin and shadow, a city so vast its walls seemed to scrape the sky, its streets tangled with greed, violence, and indifference. And I froze. I told myself, not me, not now, not there. The very thought of stepping into its streets felt like walking into the mouth of a storm, a city so steeped in wrongdoing that I feared even the ground might recoil beneath my feet. I had seen the wrath of God before, and it had left its mark on my heart. Fire and fear are not easily forgotten, and now I was meant to carry his words into the heart of Nineveh, to confront kings and merchants, mothers and children, with a warning they might not want to hear. Could a man survive God's anger in the streets of Nineveh? Could a simple prophet stand while the city trembled in its pride and sin? I imagined the faces of the people, hardened, laughing at the foolishness of men who claim to speak for the heavens. I imagined the king on his throne, scoffing, his advisors whispering threats behind his back. I imagined myself alone in the center of a storm far greater than any ocean, with only the voice of God for protection. And yet, I knew I could not refuse. The call was heavier than fear, more insistent than my desire to run. Nineveh, it was alive, it was breathing, it was waiting, and I was the one who had to go. Jonah 1:1-2. I boarded a ship bound for Tarshish, clutching my staff, my heart pounding like the waves beneath me. I told myself that if I could just sail far enough, if I could put distance between my feet and the city, the call would fade. I imagined the sea swallowing my fear, the wind carrying my guilt away. I imagined that in the vastness of the ocean I could hide from him. But the sea, the wind, they were not enough. God's pursuit is relentless. Even in my running, even in my attempts to bury my calling under salt water and sails, he found me. Every crashing wave, every howl of wind whispered his presence. I realized that no horizon, no ocean, no human cunning could outrun what is divine. He was there in the storm, in the panic of the sailors, in the wild thrashing of the ship, reminding me again and again that obedience is not optional and mercy follows even those who flee. Asterisk. The storm came suddenly, with a fury I had never imagined, like the very voice of God tearing across the sky. The clouds blackened, waves towered above the ship like walls of judgment, and the wind ripped at the sails as if trying to tear the world apart. The sailors shouted prayers, curses, and fear all at once, their faces pale and desperate under the lightning's fleeting glare. And I stood in the center of the chaos, heart hammering, drenched by salt water, soaked through to my bones, feeling smaller than the smallest grain of sand. The sea was alive, a vast, unstoppable force, and in it I recognized my own helplessness. Every crash of a wave, every hiss of wind through the rigging, spoke a truth I had tried to avoid. I could not outrun him. I could not hide in distant ports. I could not bury my fear beneath the waves. God's presence was there, in every surge, in every shriek of the storm, in the terrified eyes of the men around me, reminding me that no distance, no cunning, no human effort could remove the call he had placed upon my life. Asterisk. I told the sailors to throw me into the sea. My voice shook, barely audible over the roar of the storm, but there was a strange clarity in that command. I thought, perhaps if I offered myself, if I became the burden, the sea would calm. And for a moment, it did. The waves softened as I sank beneath their towering crests. The wind lessened and the ship, tossed like a leaf, steadied. But it was not the sea that had saved them, not the water, not the tempest, not the fragile ropes of the ship. It was something greater. It was obedience. It was surrender to the one thing I had feared most, God's will. In that moment, as the cold, dark water swallowed me, I understood the truth I had been running from. Salvation does not come from cleverness, from avoidance, from trying to control the uncontrollable. It comes from trust, from letting go, from facing the fear you have been hiding from your entire life and saying, "Not my will, but yours." And so I plunged into the deep, and the storm above obeyed him, not me. And in my surrender, the lives of those terrified men were spared. Asterisk. And then, darkness swallowed me. The sea became silent. A giant fish, a creation of God's will, took me in. 3 days and nights in the belly of the whale, I saw myself, my pride, my fear, stripped bare. Jonah 1:17. The belly of the fish, it was a world of darkness and silence. Not just the absence of light, but the absence of everything familiar. Air heavy with stillness, water pressing from all sides, a void that swallowed every sound but the beating of my own heart. I was utterly alone, yet fully aware that I had never been farther from hiding. There was no escape here, no way to run from what I had ignored, no shore to reach, no ship to cling to. And in that suffocating, endless darkness, something began to stir in me. Fear, yes, but also reflection. I thought of Nineveh. I thought of the storm I had caused, of the lives I had endangered, of my own stubborn pride and weakness. And slowly, my lips parted, not in defiance, but in prayer. I prayed as a man stripped of pretense, a man who could no longer depend on courage, cleverness, or the wind and waves. I prayed as one who had nothing left but the mercy of God, pouring out words I had kept silent, words of fear, regret, and hope. In that strange, wet tomb of the fish, I discovered a truth that had eluded me on the deck, in the harbor, and on the open sea. That surrender does not come easily, but it is the only path through the darkness. And even here, in the belly of the great fish, I felt the presence of God, not as punishment, but as a reminder that his call is relentless, his mercy never-ending, and his timing perfect. Asterisk. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. Jonah 2:2. I prayed, not with grand words, not with bravery that others might admire, but with everything I had, every shred of hope and despair tangled together. My voice was swallowed by the darkness, yet somehow it reached him. And in that moment, I realized something profound. Fear and faith are not opposites. They can exist together, intertwined, like storm clouds and sunlight, and even in the trembling of a man who cannot see the way forward, God's mercy is as vast and deep as the sea itself. 3 days of darkness passed, a time when the belly of the fish was my world and my teacher. I had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. And yet, then there was light. The fish, by God's command, delivered me to dry land. I stumbled onto the shore, coughing, shivering, and somehow reborn, not into fearlessness, but into a tempered courage, a faith hardened and softened all at once. And there it was, Nineveh, the city I had fled from, the streets I had avoided in fear. And I still hesitated. My heart knew the message I was called to deliver, but the echoes of my pride, my terror, and my doubts lingered. I understood the cost of obedience now. It was not easy, it was not safe, but it was unavoidable. And even in my hesitation, even in the trembling of my hands and voice, I could feel that God's call had already begun to work in me. I was no longer running, I was standing on the edge of something immense, something holy, and the choice before me was mine to make. Asterisk. Nineveh loomed larger than my courage. Its walls stretched high, its gates wide, and its streets whispered of wealth, power, and vice. Every step I took was a battle between fear and faith. My heart raced at the thought of the faces I would meet, the scorn, the mockery, the disbelief that surely awaited me. What would they say? Would they listen, or would my words vanish like smoke in the wind? I could feel the weight of God's command pressing on me with every heartbeat. To speak truth in a city steeped in sin. Could a man survive that? Could one man's voice pierce the arrogance and apathy of so many? The memories of my flight, the storm, the darkness of the fish's belly, they all crowded my mind, reminding me of my weakness, my hesitation, my fear of failure. And yet, even as doubt gnawed at me, there was a trembling spark of trust, fragile but real. I had seen the power of surrender, the mercy that carried me through the waves and the darkness. I knew I could not stand frozen forever. My legs moved forward, my lips quivered, my hands shook, but I would speak. I would speak, even if my words faltered, even if my voice broke. For the first time, I understood that obedience is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward despite it. And the city of Nineveh, it was waiting for a truth it did not yet know it needed. Asterisk. I spoke, trembling but determined. 40 more days and Nineveh will be overthrown. Jonah 3:4. My voice shook as it carried over the streets, bouncing off the walls of a city that had never known humility, never bowed to righteousness. I didn't know if they would hear me, if my words would penetrate hardened hearts, or if the city would change. And yet, I obeyed. That alone mattered. Every step I took, I felt the weight of my own fear pressing down. Fear of the people's anger, fear of rejection, fear of speaking a truth too heavy for ears that had long ignored the voice of God. My legs quivered beneath me, my hands ached to clutch something solid. And still, I walked. My lips formed the words, my heart beat out a rhythm of terror and hope intertwined. Yet 40 days and Nineveh shall be overthrown. Jonah 3:4. I realized then that faith is not a gentle comfort that soothes the soul. Faith is fire. Faith is trembling and yet moving forward. Faith is action when all you feel is fear, when every instinct screams to run, to hide, to pretend you never heard the call. It is obedience in motion, even when the outcome is uncertain. And as I spoke, I began to see the impossible take shape. Not in my courage, not in my words alone, but in the power of surrender, in the way God's truth finds its way through the cracks of doubt, even in a city as vast and wicked as Nineveh. Asterisk. Nineveh listened. I saw it with my own eyes. The merchants pausing in the streets, the rulers halting in their palaces, the people bowing in humility where once there was pride. Nineveh repented. They turned from their sin, laid down their arrogance, and cried out for mercy. And I stood there, trembling, my heart still pounding, realizing something I had never fully understood. Obedience is not the absence of fear. It is the courage to act even when fear grips every part of you. I had tried to run, to hide from what God asked of me. I had seen storms, darkness, and death. I had felt the crushing weight of doubt and hesitation. Yet here, in the very heart of a city I thought impossible to reach, I saw that mercy could flow, even through the trembling hands of a man like me. God's mercy is greater than our hesitation, greater than our mistakes, greater than our desire to hide. And even a man who runs, even a man who falters, can still find his place in his plan. Jonah 3:10. I learned that obedience is not heroic because it is easy. It is heroic because it demands everything we have, even when we are afraid. And in that moment, as the city breathed a collective sigh of repentance, I understood that God's patience can reach farther than our fear. His plan can stretch beyond our failures, and His love can turn even the most reluctant servant into a witness of His power. Asterisk. I ran from God. I hid in the farthest corners I could find, thinking the waves, the winds, the distance could shield me from His call. I feared what obedience would demand, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the anger I thought I would face. And yet, He found me, not to punish, not to break me, but to teach me the weight and the wonder of His ways. Obedience is terrifying. It asks everything of us, our pride, our plans, our comfort. It pushes a man to the edge of fear and calls him to step forward anyway. Faith is demanding. It is not gentle. It is not always understood. It shakes us, stretches us, forces us to confront what we would rather ignore. And mercy is endless. It reaches into the darkness of the sea, into the storm, into the heart of a city on the brink of destruction, and it touches even the one who runs the farthest. I am Jonah. I ran, I prayed, I obeyed. I wrestled with anger, confusion, and doubt. I faced the storm, the fish, the city, and myself. And through it all, I saw the patience of God, a patience that waits for the reluctant, that teaches the unwilling, that bends even the proud toward understanding. I am a witness to His power, His justice, His grace. And if there is one truth I carry, it is this: no one is beyond His reach, no heart is too hardened, and even the man who flees can become a voice of salvation. Asterisk. No one is beyond His reach, no heart is too hardened, not the city full of sin, not the stormy sea, not even the one who turns away. I ran from His call, I hid in the shadows of my fear. I thought distance could shield me from His voice, but it couldn't. Even the one who flees can become the instrument of His mercy, the unexpected messenger of salvation. I am Jonah, a man who ran, trembling with dread at what obedience demanded. A man who sank into the belly of the fish, swallowed by darkness, pressed against the weight of my own failure. A man who prayed with desperation I had never known, whose fear and faith wrestled together until surrender became inevitable. And I learned, His plan is greater than my hesitation, stronger than my doubt, deeper than my fear. It moves through the sea and the storm, through rebellion and running, shaping even the weakest hearts into voices that carry His truth. I am Jonah. I feared, I fled, I fell. And yet I became part of His story, part of His plan, part of a mercy far bigger than I could ever imagine. Asterisk.
If you found meaning in these stories, don't forget to share them with others and subscribe to the channel. Your support is highly appreciated. Thank you. Hit the notification button